the 1957 version of 12 Angry Men. What behavior did the jury foreman use, and how did that affect the other jurors? The foreman is in immediate control of the situation in front of him. He asks all the other jurors to sit down at the table, including insisting that Juror 8 sit down after a prolonged amount of time spent staring at the window. He remains calm throughout the entirety of the initial straw vote, and when the men start arguing, he is firm but calm and maintains decorum. The other jurors acknowledge this and allow him to maintain control of the room, often yielding to his expectations. Often the foreman is the only thing between cordiality and chaos between the jurors. Why did the jurors hesitate at the initial straw vote? I believe the hesitation stemmed from fear of ridicule from their counterparts on the jury. There is a strong underlying as well as overt tones of racism and the feeling that they must convict the defendant based on his skin color. Nobody wanted to be the odd man out, not convicting the black man. Juror 10 even says, and I quote, "I've lived among them all my life. You can't believe a word they say. You know that. I mean, they're all born liars," implying that all black people are liars. If you were the jury foreman, what would you have done differently instead of a straw vote? I would have implemented an anonymous voting system in which each person wrote down their intended verdict on an otherwise blank piece of paper. I believe it's crucial to start deliberations with a clear vote, as it's an important part of any voting process. It would allow for people to vote how they truly felt without pressure from their peers. It would also allow for any hesitant voters to vote their true feelings and not give in to the societal pressure to convict based on race or socioeconomic status. Who should convince the other of their viewpoint? Initially, as the foreperson, I would have asked Juror 8 whether or not he felt it would be beneficial to hear why the remainder of the group felt the defendant was guilty. If Juror 8 said no, I would ask him to present his facts and explain why he feels the defendant is innocent. If he says yes, I would go around the table and ask each juror to cite the specific evidence they felt made the defendant guilty. In doing so, I would insist that any prejudices are not allowed in each answer. After each round, I would conduct another round of voting to see if any changes had occurred. How would you use the jury's differing personalities in a positive light? With every different personality comes a different perspective, and highlighting all the different perspectives is important, especially when somebody's life is at stake. Learning about each juror's why, and then moving forward from there to understand what motivates them to vote a certain way. Understanding that each person's background means that they see this case differently. Example, Juror 5 comes from a slum, so he's quick to sympathize with certain aspects of the defendant's upbringing. Combating dysfunctional communication styles. The talker and monopolizer. Juror 3. He gets aggressive when his viewpoint is challenged and goes so far as to pretend to stab Juror 8 with a knife. I would allow him to continue talking, but on the basis of him allowing me to speak once he is finished. Once he finishes, I would express my concern about his personal biases in the case and offer up the hard evidence. The heckler or complainer. We see this clearly through Juror 7. His only interest is getting to his baseball game that he has tickets for and doesn't care about the verdict and just wants to leave. I would explain to him that the sooner we all come to an informed decision, we would be able to move forward and not continue the discussion. It would also be important to note that his nonchalant attitude on the defendant's life was very concerning, as he often flip-flopped his vote when he felt that it suited him. The silent member, Juror number 6. He only has a few lines spread throughout the entire movie and doesn't take a particularly strong stance on almost anything. I would relate this to the only thing he does take a strong stance on, which is the defense of Juror 9 the elderly juror, somehow to the case and explain that he needs to be as level-headed and helpful in the defendant's case as he was when the other jurors attacked Juror 9. The sidetracker, Juror number 12. During the initial straw vote, he is explaining the different ad campaigns he was worked on, without contributing anything of substance to the conversation. I would ask him to put all distracting materials away until the end of the trial and explain that concentrating our efforts on anything but the defendant is a disservice to the justice system afforded to us by the Constitution. What would I have done differently? I would have more clearly called out the prejudices in the jury room in the hopes that when confronted with their own prejudices, the jurors would face and then at least acknowledge the existence of said prejudice. The only other thing I would have done differently is back Juror 8 up when he presents the evidence about the elderly witness or the knife, when everybody else's decisions clearly came from a racist background. Juror 8 was the only one being pragmatic about any of the evidentiary support in the case.